Now move on to a sort of surprising trade. I didn't expect this to happen, didn't see this coming, but the Atlanta Falcons have traded wide receiver Calvin Ridley to the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Falcons get a 2023 fifth-round pick and a conditional 2024 fourth-round pick that can rise based on these conditions. So if Calvin Ridley is on the roster, is still a fourth-round pick. If he's not on the roster, then they don't have to give it to them, I believe. Now, if he reaches certain incentives, I assume based on yards, touchdowns, receptions, all that kind of stuff, it will be bumped up to a third-round pick. And if they sign Calvin Ridley to a contract extension, doesn't matter how much, just any contract extension, it becomes a second-round pick. So Calvin Ridley obviously suspended for the rest of this full year, but what do you think about this trade for both the Falcons and the Jaguars?
I love it mainly for the Jags. Who knows if, being away from a year away from football, who knows how that's going to affect Calvin physically. But I think we saw last year, it proved, at least last couple of years he did play, that he is the number one guy. So yeah, I mean, especially if you have to pay it, I think he said, right, if they give him an extension is when it could rise up to a second round pick. Not a bad payment.
Yes, and he only has, after this year, he has next year left, and then he's up for an extension.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see the language too. I won't be shocked. I wonder if they can get around that by like franchise tagging him. They may count as extension. Who knows? But yeah, I like it. We've mentioned for the Jags, they kind of need a number one guy. Obviously, he won't be available this season, but hey, you can learn more about Trevor and what else you have around him. And then add in Calvin Ridley in the offseason. Another year of experience for this team, because like we've mentioned, they've had some growing pains, especially Trevor Lawrence. I love it. And for the Falcons, I am a little surprised. I thought, if anything, maybe you hold him a little longer. Maybe you can grab a first round pick for him. I mean, AJ Brown. We saw Hollywood Brown go for a first round pick, and as good as Hollywood Brown is, I think, I'm not sure you would agree, but I would say that Calvin Ridley's better than Hollywood Brown. So that's interesting. But I feel like Atlanta could have been more patient, at least compensation wise. But hey, maybe they didn't want to play around, because who knows? And they said, you know what, let's just take a good deal while we got one. So I'm not going to fault them too much for that. But I think the bigger winner here is Jacksonville, but we obviously will not find out. This is one of those that, we'll have to wait to pan out going forward. But I love it for Jacksonville, taking a chance and, like we said, trying to help their young quarterback going forward. What about you?
I like it for both sides, at least in comparison to Hollywood Brown. Hollywood, when the Cardinals got him, they did have 2 years left on his contract, because they have the current year that he's under contract and then the fifth-year option. Technically, Calvin Ridley only has the fifth-year option left. And so I think there's a little more flexibility there for the Cardinals. Also, he's a little younger, so I think there's that too. And he doesn't have the suspension, the controversy attached to him. I was surprised based on the timing, because I did think it would be happening in the offseason. But I like the fact that Jags did it now, because I bet there was not that much competition, because I wonder how many teams were calling about Calvin Ridley right now. So you're kind of getting ahead of the pack. And I like the price they paid, because if it doesn't work out, you don't have to pay a ton. Like, okay, if he's on the roster, you do have to pay that fourth round pick. You're paying the fifth no matter what, but if he's on the roster, you also paying the fourth. If he has a good year, then you bump it up to a third. And then obviously the thing I do like for the Falcons is if they sign to an extension, it does become a second round pick. And I think it's likely they sign to an extension, because like I said, they only have next year to see. So like, how bad does he have to do to where they say, nah, we're not going to re-sign you? I think that's pretty unlikely, especially with, like you said, how talented of a receiver Calvin Ridley is. But even then, if you pay the second round pick, I don't think that's like the price that a wide receiver of his caliber, if he wasn't suspended right now, would have commanded. I think he would have gone for more, like you said, a potential first round pick. So I like the deal for both sides, at least for the Falcons. It's not as high as you possibly could have gotten, but I just think with the stuff surrounding him, he is 27 when he's going to potentially get the contract extension. So he's a little bit older for a guy coming off a rookie deal because of the suspension. And just with the context, I think getting a potential second round pick is a good deal for them. And then obviously really good deal for the Jaguars because continuing to build around Trevor Lawrence. So that is that deal. Hey guys, thanks for watching this clip from the Shut Up and Ball podcast. If you want to see weekly NFL and NBA content, click the subscribe button. Don't forget to like the video. And if you want to watch the full episode that this clip came from, click right here.